and welcome to this video as part of the All About Alopecia series. In this video, I'm going to be chatting to 3 parents of children with alopecia and chatting to them about their experiences. Before I ask them to introduce themselves, I'll just do a quick introduction of myself. I'm Amy, I'm Alopecia UK's Operations Manager. And as well as the day-to-day work I do for the charity, I also run a couple of support groups for children. So over the years, I've met a number of children and parents, and I tend to get roped in with the kids at some of our annual events because I have a reputation for being a bit of a big kid myself. So I'm just going to allow my 3 lovely parents that are with me tonight to introduce themselves. So if I can start with you, Isabel.
Okay. Hello, I'm Isabel. My son is aged 8. He started to develop alopecia at the age 4, where his hair became patchy, and unfortunately he's now completely lost his hair. So yeah, at age 4.
Thank you. Emma?
Hi, I'm Emma. My daughter Isabel developed alopecia in November last year and lost all of her hair within 3 months. We have had patchy regrowth, but unfortunately we're going through quite a significant loss again at the moment. So ours has been quite a short journey so far, but yeah, quite a lot gone on.
Thank you. And Serena?
Hi, I'm Serena. I'm mum to Holly. My daughter's 16 years old and she first got alopecia when she was 10. She's got alopecia areata. And she had quite a bad case when she first got it, and this year it's not been particularly good either, but in between her hair grows back and yeah, she often has a full head of hair, so quite different from the other 2 mums.
We've got a bit of a spread there with parents. So we've got obviously Isabel's got her son and then the 2 daughters, but again with different experiences with hair loss. But again, I'm sure there's lots that we'll be able to share with each other, which I'm sure will be similar experiences, and I'm sure there'll be some differences too. So it's good to have you all on board. So thanks for introducing yourselves. Before we get stuck into kind of our conversation, one of the things that we wanted to bring in as part of this video is some of the research that's been done by a PhD student at the Centre for Appearance Research. Her name is Maya Thornton, and she's kindly put together this very short presentation which basically discusses some of the findings from her research and actually tells parents at home how they can get involved in some current research that she's ongoing with. So we're going to play that video for you now.
Hello, my name is Maya Thornton and I'm a PhD student at the Centre for Appearance Research. I just want to start by wishing Alopecia UK a very happy birthday. Today, I'm going to be talking to you about some research that I've been doing with parents and carers of children with appearance-affecting conditions like alopecia. First of all, I'd like to give a brief introduction about the Centre for Appearance Research. The Centre for Appearance Research, or sometimes known as CAR for short, is the world's largest research group focusing on the role of appearance and body image in people's lives. And we are based at the University of the West of England in Bristol. Now, one big area of our work is that we work with charities like Alopecia UK who support individuals with appearance-affecting conditions and injuries and their families. As a PhD student, I've been working on a PhD project focused on developing support for parents and carers of children with appearance-affecting conditions like alopecia. So what you can see on the screen here is a visual representation of the process that I've gone through so far and will be going through in the future to develop new support materials for parents and carers. So what I'll do is I'll talk you through this process initially, and then we're going to go on to look at some finding of the research that I've done so far. To start us off, I'm going to start by talking through this box on the left-hand side entitled Interviews and Focus Groups. So this was a piece of work that I started back in 2018 in October when I started my PhD. And initially what I wanted to do was look broadly at the experiences of parents and carers of children with appearance-affecting conditions and injuries. This meant talking to parents and carers of children with a really wide range of condition and injuries. So we talked about what their parenting or caring experience was like, any challenges that they may have come across or any challenges that they were anticipating, and whether any positives that had come from their child having a condition or injury that affected their appearance. I also spoke to health and support professionals at this stage, which I'll go into more in a minute. So as you can see from the right-hand side here, the interviews and focus groups led into the development of an online survey, which is looking at these experiences in a larger group of parents and carers. So as you can see from the arrows pointing down, the findings from the interviews and the focus groups and the findings from the online survey will go on to help us to develop support for parents in the future. So what I'm mainly going to be talking about today is this first box about the interviews and focus groups. So we're going to go through what I did and what some of the findings were. First of all, we had 20 interviews with parents, and those were parents of children with a wide range of conditions and injuries, and there were both mums and dads in that sample. Then I conducted some interviews with health and support professionals, and there were 11 of those, and those were a range of health and support professionals. So people like clinical psychologists who work in specialisms like dermatology, and also people like health and support professionals who work with charities. Lastly, I did an additional series of focus groups with 25 parents in total. And across all these groups, there were 10 different conditions and injuries represented. And a lot of the parents and carers who took part were parents of children with alopecia. So I'd like to say a really big thank you to anyone who took part at that stage. So I'm going to go through a bit of a summary now about what was found in those interviews and focus groups. One main finding is that there were lots of experiences that parents had in common, regardless of what condition or injury their child had that affects their appearance. So many parents talked about times when they were upset or distressed, and a lot of the time this was related to the initial shock reaction of a child's diagnosis or their initial change in appearance. So for parents with children with alopecia, they talked a lot about the first time their child started to lose their hair. Within this, parents spoke specifically of feelings of guilt and worries about their child's future. There were also positive experiences that parents reported. So some parents said, although they were distressed initially, they started to feel more hopeful as their child grew up. Other parents talked about having greater empathy for others who were going through difficulties, and those included difficulties that were different to their own, as well as those that were quite similar. Parents also talked about teaching acceptance and understanding to their children, and this was all their children, not just the child with the appearance affecting condition or injury. So just to talk a little bit more specifically about some of the worries that parents were having. So a lot of parents were concerned about their child experiencing social challenges, whether that be in school or some unwanted attention from the general public. And common difficulties that parents were worried about were things like bullying and teasing. Parents expressed a real desire to want to prepare their child for this, and this was something that they really prioritised. They talked about this in terms of building confidence and resilience in their children. Although parents talked about this as something that was really important to them, many were unsure about how to best approach this, and they were really worried about doing the right thing or getting it right. So I'm now going to talk about what the next steps were, so what is happening with the research now. So as I said at the beginning, the findings from the interviews and the focus groups helped us to develop an online survey to ask a bigger group of parents about these experiences. So in the bullet points on the side, we can see an overview of the topics being covered by the survey. So again, broadly, we're looking at the experiences of parenting a child with an appearance affecting condition or injury. We're asking parents how they managed any challenges related to their child's condition or injury, any thoughts and feelings that they may have about their child's condition or injury, and any difficult emotions they might have felt or might be feeling now. The survey takes 20 to 30 minutes to complete and can be completed on any device, so a laptop, a smartphone, or a tablet. So as I said at the beginning, the findings from the study are really important because they will help inform the development of support for parents and carers in the future. So any responses to the surveys will help us to better understand what kind of support will be most helpful for parents. If you would be at all interested in taking part, there is an online survey link on the screen now, but I'll also ask the lovely people at Alopecia UK to include this in some information around the video. Or alternatively, you can use your smartphone to scan the code on the screen now. So if you would like to pause the video to do that now, please feel free to do so, or come back to it, and this will take you straight to the online survey. As a thank you for your time and for sharing your experiences, anyone who completes the survey can be entered into a prize draw to win a £50 Amazon voucher. So here's just a further advert giving a bit more information about the survey, and there is my email address at the bottom. So if anyone would like to find out a little bit more, please feel free to contact me at that email address. A big thank you for listening, and I want to say a huge thank you to Alopecia UK for advertising this research and for everyone who has taken part up till this point. A really, really happy birthday to Alopecia UK. Congratulations for 15 years of amazing support, and I hope you have a lovely celebration.
Excellent. Thank you to Maya and to all the colleagues at the Centre for Appearance Research for all the brilliant work they do to help those living with visible differences of all kinds, including alopecia. So over to our chat then now. Oh, I should say, if I'm one of these cool people that can say, we'll put links below. I think below this video, we'll put links to all the research that Maya's talking about so people can take part. I did that really badly, but anyway. Maya spoke in her presentation about the initial shock that parents experience when, you know, basically when the child first loses their hair. And I know that that's something that can be really difficult to kind of come to terms with. What are your memories of your child first being diagnosed, either that first bald patch or that first bit of hair kind of, you know, falling out? I don't know who wants to kick things off with memories of that kind of initial moment of, what is this?
I suppose, I mean, mine's probably the most recent one. So we moved house. 1 week later, she started back at school because it was half term. And she said, Mummy, I found a bald patch. And I was like, oh, quite dismissive of it, because just wasn't expecting it. And then went to the doctors and took it to the doctors, and it's like, oh, it's probably nothing, it'll be fine. And then obviously it all started to speed up quite quickly. The patches were getting more.
At the point of seeing that first patch, sorry, what were your thoughts upon seeing it?
I wasn't sure. I thought maybe she just, I mean, because it was only the size of a 10p piece at that point. What had she pulled something out, or, you know, what could it still at that point didn't quite, because she had beautiful thick hair, lots of beautiful thick hair. So I was like, have you done something? Have you caught it in something? She used to wear her hair up a lot. So at first it just didn't twig until as we were brushing, and then the amount of hair we'd had matting and like a lot of hair coming out when we were brushing the hair, and it was getting quite matted for quite a few weeks before then. But again, people were saying to me, I even asked my hairdresser, and I said, oh, you know, I'm really struggling brushing Isabel's hair. We're getting through loads of conditioner, and she suggested some things and said hormones can play quite a significant part in it. And I was like, oh, okay then. Still, alopecia wasn't the thing that I was thinking of. I just thought, oh, well, she's kind of that age, she's 12, maybe that'll be it. So I think until and we were really lucky in our area, because that was at the end of October. Within 4 weeks, we saw the dermatologist, and we'd had about 3 patches and still significant loss every day at brushing. That's when we got the diagnosis, and that was just, I don't know, for me, it just felt, it totally knocked the wind out of the sails. It's just really hard to describe it, really.
How about you, Isabel?
For me, it was a mixture of emotions. It was partly relief, it was devastation, and there's that continuous worry for me. My son was born 3 months early, and he has hydrocephalus, but I'm very lucky in the sense that he's developmentally, he's fine. And so when I first got told that my son has alopecia, I was relieved in the sense that I knew we had gone through far worse physically on the on the inside and everything, due to his prematurity. But I was also devastated because he got badly bullied when he started school in reception, and that is when he lost his hair because he got so badly bullied. And I moved him to a different school, and he continued to get bullied there. And unfortunately, his hair wasn't growing. He got really bad. He stopped eating. He was losing weight. He ended up in hospital because of it. He was really traumatized. But there was also this worry because he did get tested for autoimmune conditions, because they thought maybe it's an autoimmune condition because he was born early. And I myself have a couple of autoimmune conditions. They were thinking along the lines that this alopecia could be autoimmune. So there was that worry of, oh no, I hope it's not autoimmune, you know, because this could mean it could open up other autoimmune conditions. But the results have come back fine, and it's down to trauma with Oscar, and that is the devastation. And it's whether we can get over that trauma, or whether it's so instilled in him that he will never fully recover from that. That's my worry as well, you know.
Yeah. And Serena, how about yourself with Holly? Can you remember how you felt when either it being that first, you know, identification of the hair loss, or even getting that actual the words of the diagnosis?
By the time the diagnosis came, I kind of worked out that it was alopecia. But it was quite similar to Emma, that she had like a 10 pence piece bald patch at the back of her head. And to start with, we could cover it, and it was okay to begin with, but she lost quite a lot of hair very quickly. And I'd try and tie it up in different styles for school, and every time I tried it up, it would, along the parting line or where I'd had it tied up, it would pull more hair out, and she just got patches everywhere. None of them were particularly big, but it was that it all felt a little bit out of control, that I couldn't hide what was going on, and she was going into school and I was doing my best to plait it and change the styles and things. And it was that I found difficult, rather than the diagnosis or even finding the first patch. It was that point where we couldn't hide it, that it bothered me.
And I think that's really, really common as well, to kind of have that feeling of, like you're saying, feeling out of control, because it is a difficult condition to get to grips with when you don't know what's going to happen. You're not sure how quickly anything's going to happen, if it's going to get worse, if it's going to get better. So it does leave you feeling kind of a bit, what do I do here? What are we doing? What are we facing? So yeah, I don't know if anyone else can kind of relate to that, what do we do kind of feeling.
I can just remember going online and it being like for hours, just trying to get some answers. And I mean, for us, my mother-in-law has universalis. So she's always, actually she stopped wearing her wigs when Isabel was born, and she's, you know, I don't think she's fine with it, but so there was a family link, but we still never thought it would happen on sort of on the male side of the family, because she's got quite a lot of autoimmune conditions. Her daughter has, her granddaughter, my niece has, so we still didn't expect it, you know, on our side at all. Yeah, it's just hours and hours, you know, into the early hours of the morning. Right, what can I do? For me to educate myself, even though I've got a mother-in-law with it, still didn't know. So it's, well, what can I do? And I can remember I was working up in York at the time, and I went into Boots, and I was there for hours in front of the shampoo and conditioners, and somebody came across and they were like, oh, well, this one's for hair loss, and, you know, this, that and the other, and oh, well, you can get some vitamins, and oh, well, this hairbrush might help. You know, 60 quid later, I'm like, I don't care, whatever it is. And, you know, just anything to try and understand, or what might help, but I think the realisation came quite quickly in quite a short space of time, and going on the forums, and the AUK forums on Facebook and stuff like that were just a lifeline. But from that, you quickly got everybody's very different. What works for one doesn't work for somebody else. And in some ways that kind of gave you peace of mind that, well, okay, just because I bought that and it hasn't worked, but that's okay because it didn't work for somebody else. But it is then also tying into that, I've got no control over this situation, so what the hell can I do other than sit here and brush her hair every night? Thank God she was facing away from me most nights, so that I didn't, you know, couldn't see the just sheer horror of all this hair in my hands and what are we doing? But yeah, that just, what can you do? Helplessness.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if Isabel and Serena can relate to that kind of trawling the internet and the hours spent looking for answers and looking for treatments and remedies. And because again, my experience of working for the charity and speaking to parents is that that's commonplace to have that kind of that period of time where you want answers.
Yeah, it was definitely true for me. I trawled the internet, I was on the alopecia sites, and I found it quite frightening as well, because you see how far down the road your child could end up going. It may or may not happen. And now if Holly did lose all her hair, I think we would cope with it because of what we've been through. But at that point, when she had one or two little patches, the thought of losing all her hair or losing such big chunks that we couldn't hide in any way, that she'd lost a lot of hair, that really frightened me.
Yeah, it comes back to that not knowing again, isn't it? Yeah. You don't know whether you're going to be one of the people with alopecia areata that stays at the patchy side of things, or whether you're going to be somebody that, like myself, developed universalis, and is that then going to be something that stays around, or is it going to be something that you experience regrowth? How about you, Isabel, with the kind of the looking for answers and you know, going down that route?
I got no support when Oscar first got diagnosed, and he's under a paediatric consultant as well, and he's lovely, but it was just basically it's alopecia, just get on with it. And I think that's the thing. I think a lot of people who don't have experience of this don't actually understand. In some ways it's actually worse than having an invisible condition, because it's your whole physical appearance that's on show all the time, isn't it? And I demanded to see a dermatologist. We did see one, and the dermatologist said it's never going to grow back. And I was utterly devastated. And I wasn't going to accept it. And I did a lot of research, and he's been under guidance. He's going to be guided in St Thomas's now in Great Ormond Street. And we're finally being referred to a consultant who will help us, hopefully, because he's that much older. But I just think it's more than just not having hair, you know. Yeah. And I think a lot of people, including medical professionals, don't fully understand that.
I think sometimes with the diagnosis, I mean, again, I can speak not as a parent, but as somebody that has the alopecia themselves, and the diagnosis that I got, which it does seem to be very similar across the board, regardless of your age. It's just often that it will be yourselves often receiving that diagnosis, either with your children or on behalf of your children. It's given to you in a very matter-of-fact way that, you know, you have alopecia, this is what it is, but then that's it. It's like, well, okay, so where am I now, and how do I cope with this? So yeah, that can be kind of like a really difficult thing to get to grips with. One of the other emotions that I thought was really interesting that Maya pulled out in her presentation, and again, it's one that comes up repeatedly in phone calls that I have with parents that when they're ringing up for support, and it's feelings of guilt. It's feeling really guilty that. Can you relate guilty, and if so, why? Can you put your finger on why you felt guilty, if you did?
I did. Holly seems to be really easygoing, but she tends to internalise stress, and she was having a really tough time at school, and I should have gone into school a lot sooner than I did, and she felt like I wasn't supporting her, and because I wasn't going in and fighting her corner, yeah, I blame myself that was the trigger, and that was the first stressful situation that she found herself in, and her hair loss started around about that time. And even now, it's at points where she should be really, really stressed, and she isn't showing that stress, that her hair loss seems to be at its worst. And yeah, and sometimes I can put myself in there and go, yeah, I've not handled that properly, and is this down to me? But certainly the first one, I felt very guilty when she was diagnosed with it, that I'd not been in and fought a corner at school.
How about anyone else? I think one of the things that sometimes the feelings of guilt manifest themselves in the fact that you can't take it away, and you can't take that on for them, and it's or even, as I say, we've also heard from people who, if they've got other autoimmune conditions in their family, they feel responsible. And I always try and say to parents that this condition is a weird and wonderful condition in many respects, but none of us are to blame for either getting it or for, if our children have it being anything to do with us. But yet I think it comes from that looking for, always wanting a reason and always wanting to know why. And I think sometimes that's how these feelings of guilt creep in. And I say that, I think feelings of helplessness sometimes in order to not really know, what it is what is best for your child in terms of those initial feelings. I think that can be difficult.
Because I know definitely for me it was the helplessness, but I know for Joe it's guilt, absolutely 100%. And when we were talking about me coming on for this, I said, is there anything? And he said, but what would be the main emotion? And for him it is the guilt, because for him it's the link, it's the family link, it's the genetic link. And I said, again, we've talked about triggers, and it's like, well, we've just moved house, but she wasn't moving schools, but we've just moved house, and well, it could have been puberty, and but it could have been a million things. And
exactly, it could have been a million things, and it could happen at any time. And I think I think kind of exploring those feelings, it doesn't help anyone, does it? It certainly doesn't help you as a parent, and it doesn't help your child either. But I think it is a natural thing, because it's one that does seem to crop up a lot. We hear about it a lot.
I don't know about any of the other mums, but in the very early stages, when we talk about guilt, there was one incident, and it still sticks with me now, where we were talking to somebody who I thought would understand it a little bit more, because they've been quite close to it for a lot longer even than me. And it was very much of, well, it's just hair, and if needs be, I'll shave my head, and so-and-so will shave the head, and so-and-so will shave the head to show some support. And I can remember sitting there and going straight away, I can't do that. And I felt awful because, well, no, I couldn't shave my head to show her that I support her in that way. And that made me feel like the worst parent alive, because I would lay down on hot coals. And it sounds bad, because it's like, but why? If I lost my hair through alopecia, to me, very, very different thing. But then Joe often says, yeah, but she wouldn't want you to do that. She wouldn't want you to go through that trauma, because the bit that I've tried to, and everybody in the family got an alopecia awareness card in the Christmas card that year. This year it's just gone. But I said the bit about it is, it's not a life-threatening condition, but it is life-changing. I stress that to everybody. That's the impact it can have. So, yeah, but I felt guilty for not putting myself in that same situation to try and empathise better with her. But
it's a weird one, because there's very few other conditions where, in order to empathise with somebody, you'd want to take on the condition. And yet, and that's not me kind of making fun of that, it's something that does come up often. And I think I do remember my own mother, I mean, again, a very different experience to you guys, because I wasn't a child when I was first diagnosed with alopecia. I lost my hair at 27. But I know that some of the feelings of helplessness would also have impacted my mum in the same way, because whether I was 27 or 7, I'm still her baby girl. So I think there was that, well, what can I do? And I don't think she ever said, I almost like, well, I wish it was, I think she did say, I wish it was happening to me instead. But it did come round to thoughts of, well, I wouldn't want that. I wouldn't want that to be you, or friends that offered to shave heads and things. It's like, well, no, I don't need you to do that. This is kind of, it's my journey, and I appreciate that you want to empathise, but it doesn't need to be in that way. I can appreciate where you're coming from. I can appreciate why you would feel guilty that way. But just because, say, something impacts on a family member, is no reason why you should feel guilty for going to the hairdressers and having your hair done. It's not the way it works. So I can appreciate that.
I felt guilty, and I still feel guilty, because I have 2 autoimmune conditions. I have type 1 diabetes and celiac, and I've had it all my life. And when they were investigating what was causing the alopecia, and they said they wanted to do tests for autoimmune conditions, that is when I started to feel guilty, because I thought, well, I've got autoimmune conditions. Oh goodness, I've passed, you know, another autoimmune condition on to my son. And then I felt even more guilty when I was sending him to school and he was coming back saying, Mummy, I'm different. I look different. I will never have hair. And it was the way he was saying it as well. He was so down, you know, and I got no support of where to go to get help. And it wasn't, I didn't want counselling, because I wanted a counsellor who perhaps had experience of alopecia, or who understood the condition, you know. But there just wasn't anything out there. And I was I didn't want him to focus on his physical appearance, because there was nothing wrong with his physical appearance as far as I was concerned. But it was trying to get him to understand. And he still hasn't quite grasped that, you know, that everybody is different. You know, we've got the different coloured eyes, etc. But he still feels the same.
Yeah.
And I'm hoping,
and hopefully as time goes on, hopefully when things get back to normal with support groups and things like that, hopefully it's something we can get him along to meet some others with alopecia. And I think that would really help to boost his confidence in knowing that he's not alone, and there's plenty of others, you know, of us, both adults and children. I think, again, meeting adults with alopecia can be a really beneficial thing for children, to kind of see that in a bit of a role modelling, and kind of, you know, they can see people living their lives and being happy and content, even though they've got alopecia. It's not, you know, it's not something that they have to worry about for their future.
Yeah. Can I also just say, I don't know about the other parents and whether they've had this, but since Oscar's alopecia, age 4, I've had people come up to me, not every day, but to say, oh, I love him, or what's the matter with him, or has he been poorly? And they've either donated something, given him something, which is lovely, but because you've got the child with you, you don't want to go into it, you know, and they will assume that he's got cancer because he hasn't got hair. And you say, no, it's not cancer, it's alopecia, and it's very difficult. And then they'll say, well, what's that? And you have to go into it. But because he's older now, he's much more aware, you know. So I don't know if any other parents have found that, but I feel guilty, because at times I haven't been able to tell parents or people that actually it's not cancer, it's alopecia. And I've just had to like accept it, to not make a big deal of it. I don't know if any other...
Well, I was about to say, I think that's definitely one that crops up most with, obviously, children that have the total hair loss. Am I right in thinking, Emma, that ordinarily your daughter, does she wear wigs? Am I thinking?
She does, yeah. When she was losing, we went from it was similar to Serena, you know, we were doing everything we could to cover it, and then we worked very closely with the school, so she was allowed thick headbands and then tube scarves, and then as she went back after New Year, she'd had her first wig fitted, and yeah, occasionally she'll go out with nothing, but only she'll be fine around the house or up in the garden or anything. But yeah, I think the vast majority of the time she has, and she was working after we'd been to the meeting in March in Leeds. She was like, right, when I finish school for the summer, Mum, I'm gonna leave the school and I'm gonna just take my hair off. And I was like, brilliant, babe, you do that. But obviously unfortunately we haven't been able to do that. But she's talking about going back now, and yeah, I don't think we're in a position. So I haven't had that same experience as yourself, Isabel, with, you know, with people coming up, because it's always look, you wouldn't have noticed that. I notice it and I know what's happening. Nobody else really notices it. But there was something came up at school when she was losing her hair, and somebody had said something to her about, somebody had basically said, oh, Isabel's got cancer. And she came home and talked to me about it, and I was, no, you absolutely must go back and make sure that people don't, because it's easy for those sort of rumours to rumble around, especially in secondary schools. But never had it. But yeah, she's not, you wouldn't notice it as much, because yeah, most of the time she looks like she's got ordinary hair. She was even accused of lying when she went back to school in the new year about her alopecia, because she'd got a full head of hair when she went back, which obviously she had hair, but it wasn't her own. So yeah, but no, not quite the same as Isabel.
But I have definitely spoken to parents who do have, I say, particularly if your child has total hair loss, the visible difference element of that is obviously a bit more kind of out there. And myself as an adult, when I had total hair loss as well, I would have more kind of occasional perks that would come my way, and I think, have I got this for the right reason? And again, it does create a bit of an awkwardness, but then equally the awkwardness can get worse by then having to try and explain yourself, when I kind of think we don't have to explain ourselves. If somebody wants to do something nice, I think sometimes it's a kind of about taking it, but I can appreciate why that would lead to feelings of guilt if that happens on a regular basis.
The other thing that scares me is wigs, believe it or not. And I know that sounds silly, but I'm a teacher, and there was one class I was teaching, and funny enough, the child had total alopecia areata, and he came in with a wig, and he was so happy with this wig. But when I was a supply teacher, and I was doing long-term work, and obviously I didn't know the class. I was getting to know the class to begin with, but outside in the playground when I was on duty, there were these group of children who came along and actually pulled the wig off the boy's head. And that has left a really huge mark with me. And that's what worries me about a wig for my child, because the trauma he's had at school in the past and the situation, my son is now homeschooled. But I'd like him to go back to school at some point with the hope of having some hair, whether it be the wig. But at the same time, that's left a massive mark. No, I don't know if anyone's had that.
Yeah, sorry, Serena, you go, because I've spoken.
Not particularly me, but Holly has very much said that she doesn't want to wear a wig, that she feels that it's like she's hiding what's going on, and that if children pull the wig off and see it, that the embarrassment of that will be worse than them possibly spotting the patches. She also plays rugby, and she was saying she really doesn't want to wear a wig when she's playing rugby, because the chances of it being pulled off in a match are quite high. So yeah, I know exactly where you're coming from with that.
I mean wigs are always such a very personal choice, so it's always kind of it should be child-led and parent-led. I mean, I don't know how it came about with your daughter Emma and wearing wigs, and how the conversation came about, and how she feels towards her wig, I suppose.
I mean, she's got a lot better. I mean, at first, when we don't call it wigs, it's always hair.
Yeah.
And when we say the dermatologist, the two appointments that we've had, they've been very careful to just call it prosthetics or something like that. And at first it was, as she just got the patches and we could cover it, everything was fine. But with the rapidity of the loss, we knew that we would have to start to just get things in place. So if she wanted to go down that route, we'd know where we needed to go, and we could make it happen quite quickly and easily for her. And even just, walking past a shop, a positive image shop, quite close to us, and she said, oh, can I just go in and have a look? Yeah, of course you can. And the whole of the Christmas and New Year period was taken up with visits to, we had another fitting at the hospital, although that ended up in us having to come to Leeds to be fitted for an NHS one. Little Princess Trust, that was done via somebody a little bit local, not particularly local, and they were absolutely magnificent. But we'd already gone through, from the mid-November when we got the diagnosis up to December of finishing for school, several occasions where when she'd got the tube scarf off, boys had grabbed it and pulled it, and on her, I think it was penultimate day at school, I got a, because constantly looking at my phone, pupil services at the school rang, and 2 girls had goaded another one on to grab the scarf off her head, and she'd done it, but as soon as she did it and saw what was underneath, the girl had burst into tears and gone running off and fessed up to pupil services herself straight away, because it turned out that she'd got a family member with alopecia and she felt dreadful for it. She was still massively reprimanded, both of the other girls that were involved in it were, and Isabel seemed to very much take it in a stride. But I think that was potentially at that point when she started to, she didn't want to look different. Yes. But also we have in a way, she doesn't really want to wear it because she feels like she's hiding who she is.
And I think that's the thing with wigs. So again, I'm speaking as an adult with alopecia, but I feel very conflicted about wearing them. And I most often don't wear them. And I'll be honest, more often than not, it's because I find them physically uncomfortable. I'm somebody that, I'm a bit of a free spirit, and I'd rather not have anything on. But the itchiness and the heat is one thing, but then equally for me, there's an emotional kind of, I have a bit of an emotional barrier with wearing them. And for me, it's that whole, it feels like I'm trying to replace what I've lost, but I know that I haven't. So there's all sorts of different experiences and feelings that we have towards wigs. We all feel very differently about them. But I think I was going to come back to you, Isabel, and say that it doesn't necessarily need to be that in order for your son to get back into mainstream school, he needs to have hair. It can be about him becoming a confident little chap without his hair. And often it's all about confidence, and that kind of, it brings me on to one of my questions actually. I think it's often about building resilience in children. I think that was one of the things that Maya touched upon, in that it's something parents want to be able to give their children, is kind of confidence and resilience. And I was just wondering, is there anything in particular that you think has helped kind of boost your child's confidence, or is there anything you're looking to do in the future?
I decided to research some famous people or well-known people on TV who have no hair, and I discovered more than one, but I got in touch with Matt Lucas. And Matt Lucas has been brilliant. You know, he will do Zoom sessions with my son Oscar, and they're sort of like a friend there, you know, so he can go to for support. And I think actually that's probably one of the best things I've done, because he's also got alopecia and he also developed it as a child. Rather than me going back to the doctors to say, look, my son isn't coping with this, he might need some extra support. He's been superb. I can't
it shows just how important it can be to have that kind of role modeling, and that kind of, it can really help to boost confidence when he can see not only somebody, you know, in adulthood who's coping fine, but also somebody that's done really well and is, you know, is leading a good and happy life. It can be a real boost, I think.
Yeah. I've also written to some TV companies to ask if we could see some more people who have alopecia on TV, whether that's in TV programs, I don't know, like Coronation Street, EastEnders, or, you know, just general TV programs, to try and get it more recognised and accepted, and develop a better understanding of the condition, you know.
And I think that's so important, and it's really funny you should mention that, because coincidentally this week we put something out around an opportunity for somebody that just wanted for a regular TV show, but they wanted to see somebody with alopecia represented in it. It was actually a children's TV show.
Oh, yeah,
so TV companies are doing that, and it's good to see. And we as a charity, if we get those adverts our way, we're keen to put them out, because we're keen to see people with alopecia represented in like you say, mainstream telly, but it not be a thing. It's just they're in there, they're in the mix. And again, from a point of view of your children watching that can be really powerful, because again, it's that being able to relate to somebody who's just like me.
No, I totally agree. Oh, I'm pleased about that. That's good.
Yeah, no, that is starting to happen. And I mean, I've been with the charity now for, let's not think about it, 6 years. And during that time, I've seen a steady increase in things like that happening. And we're also seeing an increase in, you know, kind of modelling campaigns that are featuring people with visible differences, not just alopecia, but, you know, we've seen kind of like vitiligo on the catwalk and, you know, models with psoriasis. So things are kind of changing that is hopefully going to make younger generations that are faced with a visible difference have an even easier you know, kind of journey with things, because we know in the past from speaking to adults with alopecia who have had it from being a child that, you know, we have come on leaps and bounds in the years that have you know, since passed, but we've still got a long way to go, I think.
Yeah, definitely, yeah.
Just a couple more things I was wanting us to discuss. I just wondered if she mentioned at the end of the presentation around the fact that, you know, it's not all doom and gloom, and as much as things can feel quite difficult at the beginning, but, you know, some families find that actually alopecia being in their lives, you know, they can see a positive side to that. And I just wondered if you had any thoughts on that. I mean, from my own experience of having alopecia, I think I've become a more empathetic person towards others with whether there be visible differences or let's just say challenges. And I just wondered, have you seen as a family any positives come from having alopecia?
Yeah.
As a mum, I've become a lot more tolerant about things. I always thought I was going to be one of those parents that went, you're not going out looking like that, and I'd be really strict about makeup and what she wears. But through looking at the Alopecia Facebook site, there's a lot of women on there, particularly women who use makeup, and they use that to create their identity and to almost to deflect from what's going on with their hair and to make them feel a little bit more feminine. So Holly and I have not rowed at all about the makeup that she wears, just because it helps her feel better about herself and gives her more confidence.
So what you're saying is that kind of the typical mother and teenager relationship of that, you're not doing that, you're not doing this. You've kind of been a bit more relaxed with things like makeup.
Yeah, it changed my priorities a little bit, I think. And she has to find her way, and she has to do what makes her confident. She's always led the direction that the treatment's gone with the alopecia, and how far down the steroid route she wants to go. She's always taken control of that, and I think that's been quite important for her. And now she's 16, she's taking control of her appearance and what she wants to do, and so that's been lovely.
How about you two? Is there anything that you can draw from it in terms of, you know, do you feel that or has it changed you as a family in any way by having alopecia in your lives? Or is that too difficult a question?
No, I mean, you do get to that point of, you know, let's not sweat the small stuff quite so much as we used to. You know, there's bigger things to think about. I think because we're still quite new to the whole process, I would say I'm still struggling for that positivity, because we're going through it at the moment with, she seems to be losing it again, and you know, and it's how are we going to manage that and stuff. That I think that I still feel very frustrated with the condition, because there is no, it will work, no it won't. And I think because she's kind of at that age, you know, she's just turned 13, we've got the whole teenage years to go, you know, the whole boys. And she asked me the other day, what kind of husband do you think I'm going to have, Mum? I was like, I don't know. But, you know, there was a lot of words of somebody who's kind and patient, understanding, empathise, all these words that it's like, because that's what you're going to need in a husband, because I know that that's what I've got in my husband, who helps me to, you know, or we help each other to support her. So yeah, I would say still struggling a little bit with the positives, but you do have a different set of priorities.
And it's still really early doors in terms of your journey. I mean, it's great that you've joined us on this video so soon on with things. I think again, it's always interesting to get that perspective. How about you, Isabel? Anything that springs to mind?
I think for Oscar personally, and for me, well, for me, I've become more aware because I'd never heard of alopecia until Oscar had got diagnosed. There's becoming stronger. So I think Oscar's become much stronger in dealing with challenges relating to alopecia, whether that's people's remarks or the outcome of alopecia. I think there's empathy there. He's become much more empathetic towards other people who have got conditions. But I think there's also determination. I've got much more determination in the hope that there will be a cure, or at least contribute to finding a cure, or finding what is actually causing the alopecia, what is the cause of this, or helping creating new treatments. Yeah, so I think determination as well is important. Yeah.
And I don't want to end on a really tricky question, but I'm going to throw one into the mix. If you could come up with just one piece of advice for somebody that, I don't know, let's say today they have just found out that their child's got alopecia and they're feeling completely bewildered, what advice would you give to them? And I know that's a hard one because it's hard to give like a single thing, but is there anything that springs to mind that would be, if you could tell that parent to do one thing, what would that be?
I definitely say that you're not alone. There's a huge amount of support, and Alopecia UK, you know, I can't fault them. There is a huge amount out there. It's just knowing where to go with it. But the other thing I would say, and one thing that we did right from the get-go, was we were in and we told the school what our expectations of them was, rather than waiting for, it was like, no, this is what we're expecting, and they've stuck to it. So it's certainly with school age children, I'd certainly say, yeah, tell the school what you need from them.
I wanted to read a line actually, and we'll read it word for word, that you popped in an email to me when we were arranging this chat, and I found it was so powerful, Emma, and I think that every parent should take note of this, and if they're having any struggles with schools, again, get in touch with us as a charity, we'll see if we can help. But your words, I just thought we need to include this somewhere on our website because I really loved it, and you said, work with the school and don't accept less than your child deserves.
Absolutely.
And I just thought that is absolutely what parents should be doing for their children. And as I say, we know that some schools absolutely get everything right. Some schools struggle with certain areas, but I say if any parents are struggling particularly with schools, we're currently working on a school pack at the charity, and I'm hoping that is going to make things easier. But yeah, that's really good, Emma. How about you, Serena? Is there anything that you can think of in terms of if somebody's really struggling right now?
Take each day as it comes. That when you actually get there, you'll cope with it.
Yeah.
When Holly was first diagnosed, I was almost looking at the worst case scenario, and at that point I wasn't ready to deal with the worst case scenario, but taking it step by step, things did get worse with her hair, and we coped and we got through it. So yeah, just don't look too far ahead, just take each day as it comes. And
that's it as well. And I can relate to that so much, because so many times when parents are getting in touch with us and I'm having these support calls, and they're often thinking, I say to them, what are you thinking is the worst case scenario? And those words come up because that's what they're thinking. They'll say, well, he or she, whoever they're talking about, is going to lose all their hair. And then I'll say, but that does happen. We don't know if it's going to happen for your child, but I can say with some certainty that if it does, there are things that can help, and it doesn't need to be that you're thinking the big doom and gloom outcome of my child losing hair, that's it, that's the end of everything. That's not how it needs to be. And there's so much that is out there now that so we can do as a charity, that schools can be doing, that say families can be doing. It doesn't need to be that is the worst thing. It's actually, that's alopecia, and if that's going to be the alopecia journey that you have, it doesn't need to be bad. It can be it can be something that you can live happily alongside. And that probably leads us quite into Isabel, because obviously your son is somebody who, like me, has had extensive hair loss. So is there anything you can say to sum it up?
I think for me, it's more, I know getting the diagnosis is a devastation for the whole family. But when you're dealing with young children getting it, I think it's more, and I know it's extremely hard, but try not to show your devastation to to your child. Try and be really strong for your child, and understanding and supportive. But can I just say, yes, schools, but also medical professionals as well, because like my experience, it was just literally, your Oscar's got alopecia, get on with it type thing. There was no support or really understanding of what damage can be done from the physical appearance of children and people, you know, the mental side of things and that. So yeah, I think it's just that, but I totally agree with Emma and Serena, you know, yeah.
Thank you, and you've just led me to kind of like maybe one further point, because we haven't kind of said that one of the difficulties, I think, being a parent, you're carrying your emotions. Sometimes then it can be really hard, because it's hard to kind of keep those emotions in, but sometimes it is helpful to actually not have all that emotion out with your child. For your child, sometimes, again, often depending on their age, but for the younger children, it is important to kind of be that voice of reassurance and that voice of everything is going to be okay, because it will be. But I think sometimes I have to kind of say to parents, sometimes you need to tell yourself that and remind yourself that it will all be okay. And that is hard if you're having a day where it has felt like it's all got on top of you a little bit too much. But I think that's probably a kind of a good chance to maybe kind of round up this chat. I just want to firstly say thank you to you guys. Thank you, Isabel and Emma and Serena, for joining me. I also want to say that if anyone is struggling or is just looking for information for whether it be for your child or you as a parent, there's lots of resources on our website. If you go to our website and look at the support and advice section, there's plenty of stuff there. Also, I just want to kind of say thank you for watching, and I'm hoping you're all joining in the AUK 15 for 15 celebrations that are happening this month. And that's it. Thank you very much.